You know, as a public leader, and this is something I've done for really 20 years, I was the head of a $4 million organization, nonprofit, Council on Aging, for 10 years. I was also the executive director of another nonprofit called Hospital Chaplain Services, where I negotiated contracts with all of the major hospitals for non-sectarian chaplains. I did that for another 4 years. And then I have been in office now for, I'm going into my 7th year. So 20 years of being in the public eye and in leadership. And having a leadership role, especially when it comes to the public and being in elected office, is very stressful these days. Public electeds are under attack. We have much lower approval rates. We often are sleep deprived. We have 24/7 jobs because we don't get to punch a clock. We have night meetings, we have weekend events, we stay up late reading our notes and from our agenda. Any given week, my agenda easily has over 100 pages to digest. Important things that I need to vote on that involve millions of taxpayer dollars. If you add to that the whole issue of conducting business in public and having people more and more who have serious mental illness come into our boardrooms to testify. We have more threats on our life and our safety. So that we're now adding additional security in what was once a very more civil public venue. It's still public, but the reality is that the people who sit in the chairs to make decisions feel the weight of the cumulative stressors that we experience every day. There are times where you have to turn off all of those electronic devices. I park my phone in the bathroom far away from me at night. Plug it in, I turn it off. I basically say, you know, it gets to be 9 o'clock at night, and unless it's a board meeting and I need to do some correspondence with staff, I stop. I also make sure I have at least one full day off a week, and my staff knows that that's important to me, and they protect me and make sure that I do have that one day off a week. If I have 14 hours of consecutive board meetings, and usually it's more like 3 days because they mount on top of one another, and many of us have regional hats as well as local hats. So for instance, I have to go to San Francisco a couple times a month to represent the Air District, where I represent Sonoma County. I then drive to Petaluma for a smart train board meeting. We're building a train here in Sonoma and Marin counties. So almost all of us carry some additional hat other than representing our local constituency. My answer is also to make sure that I take good care of myself. I have consistently in the last 7 years watched people that watch their health degrade when they get elected to office. They tend to gain a lot of weight, they stop exercising, they eat poorly. It really is about handling the stress. So I'm very careful in terms of what I eat. I try and eat really healthy food. I'm not always successful at that. I'm not too hard on myself, though. I make good choices when I have to eat publicly, because you have to eat a lot of those rubber chicken dinners at events. You don't have to eat the dessert, and you can't eat the vegetables and do a few other different things too and eat less. You have to watch how much you drink too. It's not uncommon for people in elected office to have substance abuse issues with alcohol, because alcohol is something that is socially accepted and it's served very widely at events, and especially where politicians are concerned. And then I exercise and have as much fun as possible. I love to hike. I started horseback riding again. I'm a road biker, very enthusiastic road biker. I try and get on my trek at least once a week and ride about 25 miles a week. I go out with friends in order to socialize, and I go out into the country. I started a whole club basically called Biker Chicks, where the average age of the woman is probably 45 or more, and we road bike together. And I really try and make sure that I take good care of myself and I have downtime. And when I go home, I try and make sure that my home is a sanctuary in terms of my pets, my loved ones, the people I live with. Staying in touch with family members is really important, and then taking sufficient vacation time too is really important, because again, it's not a 40-hour job. It is more like, it's hard to describe. There are some weeks where we might put in 40 hours, but frequently if we added up all the time that we end up emailing or corresponding or going to additional events or studying in bed at night until 11, 12 o'clock at night, it's probably closer to more like a 70-hour-a-week job. But there's not a lot of downtime, so it's important to have really good boundaries. You know, I think one of the things that we need to do as elected officials to avoid burnout is to remember we're not going to make everybody happy. There are going to be people out there that are threatening to us, that are overly aggressive. They write us nasty emails. They tell us they vote, and they'll vote us out of office if we don't pay attention to them or vote their way. You're not going to make everybody happy. So to be able to kind of back away from that people-pleasing role that a lot of us have that enter into public service is important. And then to remember that if you're burned out, you're short with people, you're not your best, you can't think clearly, you can't listen clearly. So much of our job is about empathic listening. You can't listen empathically to somebody else unless you can listen first empathically to yourself and treat yourself with kindness and with compassion. I think it's important that we support one another. Women do that probably much better than men. In terms of kudos and thank you for doing this and good job. You know, we're not always fiercely competing. So I actually think my male colleagues could learn a lot by watching how their women colleagues work with one another in a more democratic, less competitive way. We all need to go there. And we have to be highly intuitive people when we run for office. And sometimes to our detriment as well. So the point is that remembering where I begin and where that other person and where I end in terms of my boundaries, and not letting those boundaries be violated. That's tough because people feel that they own you when you are a public person. And setting good boundaries is important. Sometimes people want to talk to me when I'm rushing around at the store and I've got to get out of the store. And so what I will say to them is, boy, I'm really interested in what you have to say. It's so nice for you to come up and talk to me, but I really have to get going. And would you please give me a call or send me an email tomorrow when I'm in my office? And just very politely ask them to contact me at another time. That's important to do that. You know, if I could give any piece of advice to leaders, I would say that the hallmark of emotional IQ and leadership really goes back to empathy. The degree to which we can empathize with others, not sympathizing, because sympathizing is pitying, it's where our boundaries drop. Empathy is to understand what somebody else is experiencing. And then to go and turn that empathy back on ourselves as well, to be able to step back and look at our lives and look at what we accomplish every day and to be kind to ourselves. I'll give you an example. Sometimes we have people that come in and become very violent with their rhetoric. And I will contend that violence doesn't begin with making a fist. It begins with that rhetoric. And it's body language as well and how you express yourself. And if it gets to a certain point where I find my heart speeds up and my body is reacting in a way that it feels violent and threatening, I'll stand up and leave. And I'll just politely nod to the board chair or whoever's running the meeting that I'm going to step out now. And I step out and then I come back. And I don't think this argument about constitutional freedom of speech is a fair one to make when you're being threatening or violent. I have a constitutional right, and all electeds do, to be in an environment and work in an environment that is free from hostility and from harassment. So we do need to remember it's always about setting good boundaries with others. But on the emotional side, on the heart side, it's about having empathy for others and empathy for ourselves. And that's when we can do our very best